Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We're going to get started right away because we opened it a couple of minutes late today. But hello, welcome back. Today is March 16th, 2023. This is MasterAdvisor episode number 68. We have a new topic today. We'll be talking about booking villas, which is something we have yet to tackle on this series. We have a great travel advisor joining us, and we also have a sponsor to get to. So let's go ahead and get started. For everyone who's new to this series, just a couple of quick reminders is that the chat is going to be open as we move along through the next 45 minutes or so. Please drop questions or comments in there. Hopefully we'll be able to incorporate them into this discussion over the next little period. Also, if you want to switch into speaker view on your Zoom, that's going to be the best way to watch this session. Before we get started, I want to thank all the travel advisors who came out to Travel Marketplace show in Vancouver last week. It was really the TMR's team. It was our best show ever. I was able to meet so many travel advisors and so many fans of this series, and we have some great ideas for content moving forward. But it was really great to hear from so many people, and hopefully I'll be seeing more people along the road over the next few months. Just a reminder in that vein, if you're in the Toronto area in June, we have our Travel Marketplace East show there. If you're interested in that, we hope to see you out there too. We'll have more details going out over the next few weeks about that, but it's a great show. We hope to see everyone there as well. I also want to thank all the travel advisors who attended our most recent Master Advisor session a couple of weeks ago on converting land clients into cruise clients. If you want to check that out, that session featured one of my favorite qualifying questions ever. That session's available for free on demand on our YouTube page, and Tom dropped the link into that page in our chat right now. And as always, it's a big favor to us if you're able to go over there and subscribe to the channel. That keeps helps us keep growing this series and bringing you this content every week. Richard, we don't run any events right now in the New Jersey area, but hopefully it's something we can look into pretty soon. Right now, we only do one in Vancouver and one in Toronto, but as always, keep an eye out. Hopefully we'll have something for you in the future. Speaking of announcements, we'll also have an announcement about our next Master Advisor episode coming soon. So if you enjoyed this session, hopefully you'll keep an eye out for that one. We'll have more details along the way, but we hope to see you there as well. All right, so hopefully everyone is settled. I see we have more people coming into the Zoom, but I want to go ahead and introduce today's sponsor. I'm very, very happy and excited to welcome Steve Glassman, the VP and GM from Villas of Distinction, who is joining us to introduce today's topic and today's travel advisor. So welcome, Steve, and thanks for joining us today.
Daniel, thanks. It's a pleasure to be here, and really thank Travel Market Report. I love what you're doing. I think this is just such a great way, not just for villas, but obviously for our entire industry to really, get the word out, get the education out. And thank you guys for doing this. And it's our pleasure to help sponsor this. We really do appreciate it. So we're going to talk about obviously villa business today. And what's interesting is, I've been in the villa business for about 17 years now. And, we were kind of like this for travel advisors, kind of like in the background, this dirty little secret maybe in the background. And then, this thing like that came about, this pandemic came about, and all of a sudden the villa business just really took off, and travel advisors were like, wow, this actually, if I can find the right partner to work with, somebody like Villas of Distinction, this is a good business for me. This is a good business for me to get families, to do celebrations. What's great about villa business is it's a high repeat business, and honestly, it's a high average selling price. So the compensation level for a travel advisor is very good. And we've been growing at a rapid pace for the past, obviously, 2 years through the pandemic. We've placed a lot of effort, like even with you guys, in educating the advisors, bringing webinars to them, bringing live remotes to them. And what's great is, I'm so happy that I'm able to invite and sponsor Ellen Goldman today from Largay Travel. Ellen has been a client of ours, or a partner of ours, for quite some time. She understands the value that the villa brings to her guests. But she also understands the uniqueness of the villa and how, we're not just a villa rental company, just like you're not a travel agent out there. You're an advisor. We're advisors. We create these experiences. And what I love about not only Ellen, because she does get it, and she's going to obviously talk to you about, that. And we were kind of talking a little bit about that before we went on the air. But, Ellen also works for Largay, who also gets it. Largay Travel, is a great partner of ours. And I could honestly go and say, go back like 5 years, we did a little bit of business together. But, Largay, one of the key things I love about them as an agency as well is their belief in educating not only their consumers, but their advisors as well. And they give us lots of opportunity to create that experience together with Ellen. So I could talk for hours, but I'm just here to sponsor this. It's really more important for your guests and your travel advisors to hear from Ellen. So I just want to again say thank you, Daniel, to you and the team. Thank you to Largay Travel, and Ellen Goldman. Thank you for joining us today. And I truly appreciate you taking the time to share your experiences, not only, with Villas of Distinction, but, with your clients and the Villa world. So I'll hand it back to you, Daniel. Thank you for allowing us to sponsor. And Ellen, thank you again.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Thanks to Villas of Distinction. And yeah, it is great to hear from you. And we're really, really happy to have Ellen Goldman here today. Ellen, I was hoping you could kick us off, give us a little introduction about your background, how long you've been in the travel industry, what clients you serve. And while you do that, I'm just curious of getting a sort of temperature of the room. We have a poll we want to launch about experience booking villas. But Ellen, welcome to the show. And yeah, hopefully you can give us a sort of little introduction.
Super. Thanks so much for having me, Dan and Steve. Thank you for those pretty amazing words. It's great to be here and be among my colleagues. So I think I'm rather like many people in the industry in that getting to where I am now has been a fairly circuitous route. I've always been interested in hotels. I mean, ever since I was a kid, I love the old Canadian Pacific hotels, the Chateau Frontenac, and that kind of is what my love of hotels is what brought me to the industry. I went to hotel school to study hotel and restaurant management, thought I wanted to be in operations, and then realized that that was not the part of the industry that particularly captured me. So I went to law school, for something completely different, was a practicing lawyer for 7 years. And then after I had the third shot, it's like, well, what do I really love to do? And I really love to travel, but it's not the actual running of the properties that I like, but the planning and the logistics. So 25 years later, here I am. And like many people, my business has morphed over time from fairly small sized bookings, all inclusives, fun in the sun, to a more luxury based business dealing with 4 and 5 star properties and villas and, concomitant price ranges that go along with that. So in a nutshell.
Yeah.
A big nutshell.
We hear so many interesting routes into the travel industry. Yours is particularly interesting too, because I know so many people enter this industry as a second career, and simply because of love of travel. So I know everyone has different routes, but the love of travel seems to be a shared thing among so many of the people I've spoken to. And we just saw the results of the poll. So it's about 80%. Do not have experience booking villas. So hopefully we can educate them today, Ellen, and we can do our best.
Super.
Yeah, we can do our best. So you mentioned you love planning and logistics. Your business has sort of morphed throughout the years. I'm curious, when did you start booking villas for your clients? When did it become one of your significant offerings? And could you tell us a little bit about why?
Well, I think it's always been there hanging in the periphery. Sometimes villas, people have come to me and said directly, oh, we want to rent a villa. Other times it's been the situation where they're describing getting everybody together and bringing people in from all over the country. And so the logical question becomes, is the villa, is that a perfect scenario for you for what you want to do? And so I would say it's always been there, definitely with Airbnb and VRBO being so popular on the internet. It just has brought product awareness to people, or the notion of renting a property. But I would absolutely, that's something I won't touch for my clients. And I always I start working through villas of distinction and other properties, because, that's just a picture, that's an idea, and there's no security, no service offerings, nothing else. But I do think that VRBO and Airbnb have brought the notion of non-hotel properties into the conversation.
Yeah.
And that being said, some of the villas are actually parts of hotels.
So I do want to focus this discussion on villas, but I'm just curious, because you mentioned Airbnb and Vrbo. I mean, and you said you won't really book them. Do you have a reason why you won't book them? I know there's a lot of common reasons travel advisors won't book them, but I'm curious. I mean, what's your reasoning behind sort of an aversion to those? Yeah.
Their whole business model, first of all, is designed to work one-on-one with the consumers.
Yeah.
So if I were, from a pure monetary standpoint, if I were to book with them, I would have to add a service fee, to take care of my time to even book that. But forget about my compensation. There's no way to vet the properties. When you deal with something like Villas of Distinction, they've seen every property in their portfolio, and they know when someone says it's a beachfront property, well, does that mean beachfront down a cliff, or does it mean, there's what actually, they can give you the real skinny on what a property is. They know who the people the management, and what's easy to work with. And as important as the actual villa is, and of course, if there's something that should go wrong, I've only to pick up the phone and say, Steve, help, and they've helped. But the providing of services, the concierge services, the transfers, the staff, getting the villa stocked. What if people want to go do touring? So it is a one-stop shop. And again, it's all about quality control and vetting. So yeah, that's
all right.
Yeah, that's not worth my reputation.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And that's what I've heard from a lot of travel advisors too. And that's honestly something I've been hearing from consumers as well about those properties. But I do want to focus on villas today. I know there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of education for the people on the call with us, the 80 or so travel advisors. We spoke earlier in the week, Ellen, and you mentioned there's a lot of challenges booking villas, but there's also a lot of opportunity. I'm curious if you could just start this conversation off with sort of what do villas offer that traditional hotels or maybe resorts don't, and what advantages do they give your clients that maybe other segments don't necessarily do?
Right. Well, I think what villas offer, first of all, is space, and communal space, for whether it's two people or a group of people, the ability to sit down and hang out and have a private space that is just for that group of people. So I think the privacy aspect is really important. Sometimes, and it depends obviously on the villa, there's a real price advantage to booking a villa, because the total of the 4 or 5 bedrooms is going to be much less expensive than booking individual hotel rooms. And if people do have the inclination to do some cooking, or even just stock things for breakfast, or lunch, then there's an opportunity for savings there. And then kind of on the other end of the spectrum are those villas which are just, staffed with cook, gardener, chef, and it is a real luxury experience. Again, offers privacy, a beautiful location, a complete change of venue from being in one's house. So, I think there are many reasons why why they're great.
Yeah. So I spoke to advisors. I still remember these conversations in 2020, and the conversations around private accommodations came up, and villas came up and things like that. And I know that propelled some consumers to consider villas. I mean, your clients right now, Ellen, is this a more common ask for a villa, or even a more common acceptance when you do pitch this kind of accommodations to them now here in 2023?
I don't think I ever had resistance. It was always, it's there for the right person. At one point, I mean, right during the thick of the pandemic, people wanted to make sure they had standalone units where they wouldn't have to go through any common space to get to their doorway or things like that. And in that regard, there was a real clamoring for villas. But now it's more about it's the right thing for a particular family or group or price point.
Okay. Okay, so let's tackle some of the difficulties or the challenges, I guess, when booking villas, because I know there are some hurdles that advisors who are new to the segment might not consider, and they're going to want to know how to best deal with them. When we spoke earlier in the week, you mentioned there's a ton of variety with villas, which I know is an advantage because it's such a wide range of catalog and you're able to fit clients to specific properties. But it must be difficult to narrow down what villa you want to start that pairing process with. I was curious if you could talk to us a little bit about that. I mean, what kind of challenges a wide variety of villas offer you?
So first of all, it's getting the right size villa for the people in the right location, and the number really determining how many bedrooms are necessary for villas. A lot of people think, well, we'll get a 2 or 3 bedroom villa and we'll just cram as many people in as possible. And, in that regard, that certainly does not work, because when there is a villa rental, I think I mentioned it to you, we have to list every single person who is going to be in the villa and assign bedrooms to make sure that the bedrooms, and the people go along. So there's then, is the bedding going to be matching the number of people in the room? Is it going to be one bed? Is it going to be twin beds? Is one bedroom going to be substantially more fabulous than something else, so that people want to feel like they're being treated equally? Location of, again, is something beachfront? Can you just really see the water if you look out over, the little tree over there? Yeah. So getting the location is important. And then what trumps all of it is that certain, as I said, that certain je ne sais quoi. I can offer bazillion, 10 villas that I think are just gorgeous. Yeah. But if it doesn't speak to the person, if it's not decorated a way that they picture themselves, being in that environment, then, it's hard to make it work. I just looked at one villa recently, which is this gorgeous 10-bedroom villa in the Caribbean. It was decorated at like Versailles with chandeliers and drapery with, huge tassels and very fancy upholstery. And all I could think of is really like, what are you going to do when your kid with the wet bathing suit wants to sit down there and you're thinking, oh my God, security deposit, Yeah. So there has to be that match of interests and vibe. And to me, that's the hardest thing to tackle.
Yeah. So I do want to talk about that match. We're going to be taking questions. We have about 25 minutes, above the little 25 minutes left. So if you have any questions, you can drop in the chat. But before we talk about that match, Ellen, the closeness a villa provides, I know that's an advantage for a lot of groups or a lot of families who want to be close on vacation. Sure. But I think that you mentioned that could also be a challenge too, making sure clients are comfortable with that.
Exactly. I think people have to analyze their group, kind of take a deep dive and say, this sounds wonderful. And everybody talks about the villa experience, but is this for my group of people or my family members because it is close. You are sharing common space. You can't always hide from anybody. And, you know, there are villas which actually fit that. Some are like kind of compounds and pods. So knowing that people can go back to their separated bedroom and get a break, that all fits into the calculus of being, you know, is it one big 5 or 10 bedroom villa, or is it a compound with bedrooms spread out? And that definitely goes into the calculus. It's a good thing, it's a bad thing.
Okay. All right. So it seems so, which a lot of these conversations I have with advisors always seem to come down to correctly qualifying clients, knowing what they want and knowing what they don't want when you're booking them, especially for unique accommodations like some of these villas provide. So let's talk about that match. Let's talk about that matching process for a second. And then I want to talk about getting familiar with villas, but matching clients to villas seems to be a big challenge for you and for any
Sure,
yeah.
absolutely.
So how do you start these conversations? What information do you try to know? And are there any important qualifying questions that you use in your conversations with clients in order to make sure you have the right information to make that appropriate match?
Sure. I always start with, how do you picture yourself? What do you picture yourself doing on the trip? How do you see yourself? And sometimes people say, you know, I see myself just kind of hanging out on the beach, chilling. And you know that it's going to be, you know, they may be looking for something with big common areas, a pool, a beach, but a very easygoing kind of vibe. Some people are like, well, I picture myself having, you know, someone handing me drinks, making all the meals, doing this. And then you know that that's something with a really good staff is important. Again, do they want beachfront, or are they going to be pool people anyway? And are there going to be kids? Because there are certain properties which do not allow children, because either the location being, you know, perched precariously on a cliff, or the decor is, you know, furnished with just fabulous antiques or artwork or things like that. And then I also try to find out whether people might be interested in something standalone, or whether they want to be part of a villa that's part of a larger hotel property. Because many of the hotels are now, in addition to their rooms, they've added villa stock within their property. And so that gives people the opportunity to, you know, have the advantages of the resort, but a privacy of a villa. Yeah. And then it's really just, you know, dates. A lot of villas, particularly in high season, are going to go Saturday to Saturday. And so if people cannot commit to 7 days at a minimum and a Saturday to Saturday, that definitely limits the availability. And once kind of I have all that, I call my favorite person at Villas of Distinction, and I literally say, you know, what do you have? What do you think? You know, this is the price point. They're flexible, they're not flexible. And having someone that really, there's no way I can know all the villas out in the world, and having someone who just has that knowledge immediately to know, okay, I'm thinking this, and this. They are my travel advisor.
Yeah. So one thing I thought was interesting that you mentioned was the Sunday to Sunday, that the 7-day booking that's typical.
Saturday.
Yeah. Saturday to Saturday. That's just a standard thing in the villa industry.
Yes, very much so. Weekend to weekend. Sometimes they can shift it if it's an off season. If it's not high market, sometimes, you know, they'll give it to you for less, but generally, yes, it's 7 days, Saturday to Saturday, particularly in Europe or the Caribbean.
Yeah. And right now, Ellen, you mentioned availability. How is the availability, I guess, compared to traditional hotel or resort accommodations? I mean, I know I spoke to a lot of advisors over the last couple of weeks, and all of them spoke about incredibly limited availability just because the demand is so high for vacation and travel right now. I mean, is that what you're seeing with villas as well?
I think it depends obviously on the time that you're looking for. You're looking for spring break. I mean, at this point, yeah, that's going to be a tough one.
Yeah.
Things are always hard over Christmas time. And it also depends on the size of the villa. I think you heard me lamenting before we came on that. I mean, I'm delighted that I have clients who want a 12-bedroom villa, but at any given time, there are just very few 12-bedroom houses hanging out there. So, you know, a lot of it depends on flexibility and price range. And of course, having a higher budget certainly opens up a bigger market.
So
Bigger
how-
potentials.
you did mention the 12-bedroom villa before we got on the call, and I was hoping we could talk a little bit about that, because that seems like a great opportunity for you, but it seems like a unique situation. And I mean, how did this group of clients approach you and want to stay in a villa, and did they not want any other accommodations? They specifically wanted to stay in a villa?
They did. It is something that they have done for many years
Okay.
previous to working with me. And it is their big family reunion time. And that, yeah, that's definitely something they, you know, look year to year. And last year, as a matter of fact, I think they called me January 1 or January 2, and we immediately started looking for the following year because it's a tough get.
Yeah. So what is the inventory like for that kind of size of group? And how do you go about tackling that for them? Because I assume they want something unique every year. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like it would take a significant amount of work for you to be able to track down the appropriate accommodation.
Well, I think once, you know, I looked at it last year and looked at it the year before, so I kind of know what the particular properties are. And then again, the only way to really do it is to call, you know, bring, please, you know, Kim, help me, please. What do you have that I can do between these days and these days? Because, I mean, villas of distinction is, these things are usually on the market with many villa companies. But there is some central database that they know what is, you know, what has been blocked off or being held for a certain period of time. So, you know, rather than saying right from the start, I want this villa, I have to say, okay, this is what I need, what's available.
Okay.
So when you're dealing, it's less a function of this is what I want versus what do you have.
Okay. So it does seem like I mentioned, there's a majority of people on this call who have not booked villas before. And it seems that having a relationship with someone at a villa company is going to be incredibly important to be able to start.
It is crucial, just like we can't know all the hotels in the world and we work with DMCs and multi-line reps. Yeah, it's for me absolutely crucial. And knowing, you know, that she was able to narrow things down and say, you know, this particular property is advertised as 15 bedrooms, but it's really 3 different units. And if you don't rent all 3 units, then you don't get private access to the beach. And, you know, things like that, which are really crucial to the experience, which are not readily viewable on websites.
I also know that villas have an element of customization to them, that you're able to do some things that maybe you wouldn't be able to do for your clients in a typical hotel room. If you book them, if you booked a 6-room block in a hotel, you probably don't have the same opportunity to customize that the same you do in a villa. Is that right?
Well, sure, especially for things like meals. They can set up beautiful long, you know, dining tables, and it can be on the beach, it can be on the pool, it can be under a pergola. The concierge service is key, because then working with the chefs, we can develop menus, or they develop menus for every single night. Things can be stocked with certain products, whether people are interested in, you know, healthy items or their dietary restrictions, and set up private excursions. And that all can be done and should be done ahead of time. And the concierge service is crucial.
So that's done through your supplier partner, that kind of
That is
customization.
done through the supplier partner, absolutely. And again, that's finding the villa is just the first step. And then by getting everything situated and the staffing, and a big one is trying to arrange gratuities ahead of time, because as you can imagine, it's a big staff. And I always find, not that I'm adverse to tipping, but it's always kind of uncomfortable that last day. And, who do you give to and how much? And do I have the right change? And that can be arranged ahead of time.
Okay. So you can arrange food, you can arrange gratuities, which we know are important. You mentioned the other day that sometimes what some new advisors to this segment might overlook is how important parking or driving is, or knowing if they're going to drive. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, good catch. Yeah, I forgot about that, because some villas can be really isolated. And so unless the villa is their main destination, for instance, if you're renting in Italy, in Tuscany, you really will want a car, because the joy of being in that area is to visit all the small towns and go on little frolic and detours. And it may require something like a four-wheel drive vehicle. That's something that you need to find out ahead of time, because the villa is up this gravelly driveway. So yes, people, need to consider, okay, I have this gorgeous villa. It's stocked, it's staffed. Now, how am I going to occupy my time?
Okay.
Is it just going to be hanging at the beach, or am I going to need transportation excursions, things like that?
All right. So we have food, gratuities, and driving, or I guess transportation is probably the better word for that. Those are all important for new advisors to remember.
Staffing and housekeeping. Some of the villas only come with housekeeping when you check in, and then you pay to have it cleaned when you check out. Do you want daily housekeeping, nanny service? The staffing is quite important.
Okay. All right. All right. So again, we have a little over 10 minutes left. Any questions? I know we're tackling a lot now. You can drop them in the chat. I have some questions still, Ellen. One of the things we spoke about, or Steve spoke about, he mentioned how this segment's good for families, it's good for celebrations. You mentioned that this is something that a wide range of clients will go for. I mean, villas, again, it's not a foreign option to a lot of travelers now.
Absolutely. People, there are 1 and 2 bedroom villas. I mean, I think the word villa means different things to different people, but to me, it's kind of more of a standalone housing unit, even though it may be part of a larger property.
Okay.
You don't necessarily have to leave your particular unit to access the facilities you want. So yeah, it goes for couples, friends, dare I say, the dreaded bridal parties and bachelor parties and things like that.
Yeah. Are there ever any, when you mentioned at the beginning of the call, there's never really a pushback, but are there ever any misconceptions about villa travel you get from new to villa clients? Is there anything you ever have to explain to them that maybe they overlooked, or maybe they had a misunderstanding about?
I think maybe security deposits, because sometimes there's a requirement for a security deposit, and you can see where that would be necessary if, just because damage does happen. Again, housekeeping costs upon checkout. Sometimes there are things, utilities to heat the swimming pool, costs to heat pools. Again, costs to bring in other staff. Who is going to stock the villa? But it's, just talking through the process, it becomes pretty clear, and it is specified in the contract.
Okay.
An insurance, which is, you can't, once you commit, it's not like you can say, oh, we changed our mind. And so there's they are like hotels in that regard, that it's not an easily, you are committed.
Okay. Okay. So you mentioned a couple of destinations when we were talking for the last half an hour or so. Could you talk to us a little bit about what destinations really lend themselves to villa accommodations? I mean, which ones are most popular for your clients now? Any ones that really stick out in your mind when you're sort of thinking about your clients or your bookings?
Well, I think all the kind of fun in the sun places in the Caribbean, those are just beautiful and great. They tend to have these gorgeous villas right on the beach or with pools, and it's a very casual lifestyle. And I think there are a lot of people who just want to relax on a beach vacation, and so that a villa really lends itself to that. On the kind of the opposite side in terms of touring, the classic Tuscan villa out in the countryside where people can enjoy the fresh air and have their windows open, and then go from town to town, walk into town and pick up their favorite bakery and have a cappuccino or whatever. So I think I tend to see a lot of Europe, whether it's, Italy, France, they have huge villa products. I did villas out in a resort property in Bali for a family, which was, they just had a fabulous time. So again, I think it's so many hotel properties are also putting in villas that you can get that kind of private scenario almost anywhere.
Yeah. So we have a question from Judy. You mentioned security deposits, Ellen, and this might be a question for a supplier, but I'm more curious if you have any wisdom or advice or experience with this. She wants to know, what about security for clients in certain areas? They said they had an issue with a family gathering at a villa before, but what would you tell your clients if they ask about security issues in certain areas?
Well, so many places there are many places in gated communities. Some villas do have security on site, and so I think it really just depends on each particular location, but gated communities certainly are very popular for villas, and even having people who are having a staff 24 hours on site is great, but you can arrange for security. That's something, again, the villa company would be very helpful with. And it depends on the location and what people feel they need.
Yeah. I'm curious because even not just for security, but for service, how often do you have a contact on site at the villa? Is it almost always with these bookings you have someone on site who can assist with getting that pantry refilled or getting them the things they need?
Well, the villas that I have been using typically have a full staff, so there's someone on site all the time. I did have an issue with one villa where the water was shut off because there was a pipe burst. They like kind of go, oh my gosh, okay. But the concierge had contacted me. They were right on top of things. So there is constant communication and always a means of contacting someone on the ground who can handle things immediately. And again, that's another reason to work through a company with staffing.
So clients will typically go to the concierge first if something does go wrong, then go directly to you.
Yes, I think unless it's major. It's the same thing that we tell our hotel clients. If there is a problem, if there's anything that's not satisfactory, please let us know immediately. The people on site are always in the best position to handle something immediately, versus calling me from someplace, from Italy to the United States, and then my going and calling the person on the ground there. It's most expeditious to do it, to someone who's on the ground there. But if always, I know I'm always available, and they always keep me in the loop. So it's never like, oh, did you hear about this? It's like, yes, actually, I knew, followed things right on along.
Yeah.
So
That's perfect. All right. So Steve mentioned these properties tend to have a high repeat rate. That's something we hear about a lot of segments. And it wouldn't be, it doesn't seem so surprising with these kind of, if a group of clients or a group of a family group likes to vacation a certain way, villas seem perfect, especially if you're able to fit them to the right product. Is that your experience? Do your clients who stay in these kind of villas typically come back and want to do it again?
yes, because they're open to the process and they're comfortable with the process. And it's like anything, once something is done the first time, it just is a kind of whole level of ease with the experience.
Okay. All right. So we have another question in the chat. And again, this might be one for a supplier. But we have one advisor wondering about commissions, I guess, on these kind of bookings. And I assume, I mean, because you're doing them, they're worth your time, but how do suppliers typically treat advisors when it comes to villas, whether it's Villas of Distinction, who's the sponsor, or maybe a different supplier?
It does depend on the supplier. So that's something that I ask right away. And then many travel advisors are with different consortia. So there may be proprietary agreements which have been negotiated.
Okay.
I mean, that's as specific as I can be because it really varies by.
Yeah, I completely understand. All right, so we've been through a few tips. I know a lot of advisors haven't done this, but we spoke about the food, we spoke about gratuities, driving, security, concierge, things like that. Again, Ellen, most of the advisors on this call with us have not yet booked a villa. Do you have any other tips for them? Any other things they should know, or any advice for just getting sort of that step one going and sort of dipping their toe in this segment? And any last sort of words of wisdom before we start to wrap up here?
Sure. I mean, first of all, don't be scared. There's nothing magical or mystical about it. And particularly when you work with the company, they make it easy. And they're great guides. And just when you have a scenario where people are looking for privacy or a different kind of experience, again, always suggest it. The worst they can do is say no, or say, you know what, this may not be this trip, but that's a really great idea. So just put it out there and work with a company who makes it easy.
Yeah, I know we don't like to talk about negative feedback, and I don't really want to ask about that. Maybe probably the better word is lessons. What lessons have you learned throughout your years booking villas that have stuck with you? Anything you can share for advisors who maybe are worried, or like you mentioned, don't be scared, who maybe do have some fear that they're trying to overcome?
Well, even though it always seems to, people come and say, I want a 5-bedroom villa. And it's like, you don't want to be too intrusive and ask, well, who's coming, what ages? But unfortunately, you really do need all that basic information in order to make a good suggestion. You really do need to know which family group goes with which family group, how they anticipate people sleeping. A lot of people don't feel like they want to get into that. It's just like, oh, just find me a 5-bedroom villa. But it really is crucial to slow down and get that information ahead of time. And if you have a choice between doing something that's smaller or larger, go larger. Just because invariably there's, oh, can I bring my best friend? I'll be insufferable if you don't let me bring, someone with me. Or what if someone gets sick? An extra bed is, certainly nice if someone gets a cold and you can segregate them. So I would say go bigger.
Okay, so go bigger is a good tip. Yeah, you mentioned the closeness too. I mean, we talked about how it can be an issue, but how do you get that information out of a client? Like, how do you know if people are comfortable with the closeness or the space or the lack of space in a villa? I mean, to me, that seems like a difficult thing to ask.
Oh, I would say that my clients are people I know fairly intimately, because you have to know what they like and what they don't like and who needs, a second bed. It's like being a nursery school teacher. You learn all kinds of things that, you shouldn't necessarily repeat. And that's the kind of relationship I look to develop with my clients. So it's not a one and done transaction. So generally I've been working with people, but I say flat out, I just, have you thought about, does this work for your family?
Okay.
There is a closeness, and does it work? And I've had people say, what, good question, or I think maybe we do need something where there is like more a compound versus all being together. And other people are like, yeah, bring it on. So I think it pays to be direct. I guess that's kind of what I'm known for.
All right, perfect. So I want to wrap up, but I do want to ask one more question, and hopefully this will give the advisors on the call a little introduction to what they can expect. But I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with sort of the villa landscape or the villas you've booked, Ellen. Do any of the properties stand out? Can you tell us any about your favorite ones you've booked, or even ones you've stayed at, that advisors could sort of get a sense of what kind of things villa vacations offer them and their clients?
I think the best way to do thing is to just go on websites and poke around. I mean, that is just a great thing. Get a glass of wine, go there and, say villas, Turks and Caicos, and type something in and just start poking around. That's really, that's how I learn things. And it's like, wow, okay, cool. I never thought of that.
Yeah.
And there's so many great villa websites. I mean, I just had people at Rio Chico. I have to say, now that was just a killer compound in Jamaica. But again, I have had people in Bali, and just looking at the pictures of the villas in the Como Shambhala. Oh my gosh, it's just like it just takes your breath away.
Yeah, and I remember speaking to Steve actually in the beginning of COVID, and he mentioned villas, even domestically here in the U.S. with bowling alleys, with lazy rivers, with like water parks, and incredible things that you wouldn't get to yourselves, to your own group, at your typical hotel. So there are, like you mentioned, Ellen, if you start poking around these websites, you'll see some pretty amazing things.
Yeah, so that's really kind of the best way to educate yourself, is to just, let yourself go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. All right. So I know we tackled a lot here. I really hope we gave everyone sort of an introduction to what they can expect when booking villas. I know there's a lot to get. I know there was a lot to get to, but hopefully you'll have a place to start now, and hopefully we accomplish something. But Ellen, thank you so much for your time. It really was a pleasure to have you. We've never spoke about villas before, and you were such a great guest to sort of give us that little introduction.
Thanks. It was a lot of fun, and thank you for having me on, and thank you again to Steve from Villas of Distinction for bringing me on as well.
Yeah, thank you again, Ellen. Thank you to Steve and Villas of Distinction, and thanks to everyone for coming on. We really do appreciate your attendance on these calls, and hopefully we'll see you back here in a couple of weeks. But until then, I hope everyone stays safe and stays happy, and hopefully we'll see you all soon.